Kyle Trask isn't going down without a fight, but he is fighting the inevitable. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Please subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you always get the latest episodes when they drop. I am James Yarcho, deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com, joined by my monster drinking co-host, Mr. David Harrison of BucsGameDay.com. Of course, that is part of Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation. And of course, you can follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at DHarrison82.
And as always, I want to thank you for making the Locked On Bucs podcast your first listen or your first view of the day, especially our Locked On Bucs everydayers who, just like us, are committed to this program 5 days a week. The players reported for the first day of offseason workouts, and 3 offensive players stepped to the podium to speak with members of the media, all of which for very different reasons. Most important, though, honestly, was Kyle Trask speaking about stepping into a quarterback battle this coming training camp and OTA season. Trask was asked about what he was told regarding the quarterback competition, to which he replied, quote, "I've just been told it's an open competition, but at the end of the day, I know that the team's going to do what they have to do to put whoever on the field that's going to allow our team to be the most successful. For me, I feel this time I just really need to home in and be as consistent as I can. At the end of the day, I'm just trying to do whatever I can to make this team succeed. Fortunately enough, I've had 2 years of prior experience with a veteran quarterback room, and there's a lot to take away from that. I'm going to try to implement some of these styles and routines that they had into my routine, and hopefully that will make us more successful at the end of the day." Now, that wasn't the only thing that Kyle Trask had to say, because he was also asked about how he can win said quarterback competition is the word that we were trying to say in English, to which Trask responded, quote, "Kind of just piggybacking off of what I said earlier, being as consistent as I can. I guarantee you the job won't be one if I'm thinking about outside things and different types of narratives. That's not going to translate to success on the football field. I need to narrow my focus and do my best to put the team in the most successful position possible. And at the end of the day, just have fun and lift the ones around you, because I think when you do that, it ties the whole thing together and everybody plays better." James, so I really like Kyle Trask's mentality of saying that he just needs to do whatever he can do to lift people up, just like last training camp where he lifted Caleb Skinner up off the training camp grass so that he could catch a pass that was intended for nobody except for the bleachers. Is Kyle Trask going to actually have a chance to win the starting quarterback job? Bottom line, up front, bluff, is this an open competition?
No to all of the above. Kyle Trask is not going to win the competition, and it's not truly an open competition. And the Buccaneers are basically telling you it's not an open competition. You had Jason Light last week talking about how Kyle Trask is an unknown. No, those in the facility know what they have in Kyle Trask, and he is not starter material. Number two, the Bucs are not going to be advertising putting Baker Mayfield jerseys up for sale if Baker Mayfield is going to lose this quarterback competition. Baker Mayfield is the starter, period. Now, Kyle is saying all of the right things. You like to hear that kind of stuff from him. Yeah. So maybe he's already kind of come to terms with that. He's going to go out there and he's going to compete, because if he balls out, then, worst case scenario, he's going to end up the starter. You take a look at kind of years and years and years ago when Seattle paid all that money to Matt Flynn, and then Russell Wilson came in as a 3rd-round draft pick and just blew his doors off in training camp. It's not impossible. It's just highly unlikely. And Baker Mayfield is the veteran guy with the playoff experience. He's the better overall quarterback compared to Kyle Trask. And so it kind of is what it is. So now Kyle is probably kind of shifting his focus, despite what he says, into being the legitimate number 2 quarterback, right? He's been the game day, inactive, the healthy scratch week after week after week for the first 2 years of his career outside of the Falcons game. Now he is going to set himself up through this competition by being more acclimated with the offense, being a bigger part of the practices, of the training camps. And he will be the guy who suits up, is helping Baker on the sideline with the Microsoft tablets that Baker probably isn't going to throw and break in a fit of rage, and be a little bit more involved. And who knows how soon or if his number will get called at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyle's doing the right thing. You know what I mean? Come in with an era of I'm ready to compete. I'm ready to go out and do what's best for the team. First of all, I mean, I think that is genuinely his personality, which I think is going to endear him to a lot of coaches and make him a guy who lasts in the National Football League for a very long time. I know I make a lot of jokes about Kyle Trask and throwing an errant pass that Caleb Skinner of BucsGameDay.com, part of Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, caught on the sideline during training camp. But let's be honest, we've seen Tom Brady make errant throws, right? I've seen Carson Wentz make errant throws, which I know you're all amazed that I've seen that in person. But I mean, quarterbacks will throw errant passes. It just happens. You know what I mean? Nobody's perfect. So I do say that in jest. But what really kind of bothered me the last time, well, I don't say the last time we saw Kyle Trask in action because we saw him against the Atlanta Falcons, but the last time I think you really got a chance to see him do something that could really kind of impress was in the preseason. And towards the end of that first half, like he was having a very, very solid first half there at the end of the preseason last year against the Miami Dolphins. But then when things got a little sticky, he didn't really bounce back from it very well, right? And that's what you want to see in a quarterback is resiliency. It's every quarterback wants to make the throws, and you want to be accurate. You want to make the smart decision. But what makes the best ones the best is that they're able to come off of a bad drive, come off of a bad play, bad decision, bad throw, whatever it is, even if it's not your fault, and bounce back and come out and say, okay. And then that ability to say, that's over, move on. It's a lot harder, you know what I mean, than to do it than it is to say to do it. And that's a skill that people have to work on. And I just don't know that Kyle Trask has that level of resiliency. Kind of backing up what you were saying about Todd Bowles and them saying he's an unknown. You're 100% right. He's definitely not an unknown. I mean, the Washington Commanders got one season with Sam Howell, a 5th-round draft pick. They got one game with Sam Howell. Kyle Trask got one game. Granted, Sam started and finished that game. Okay, so it's more snaps. But the bottom line is they got to see him in regular season action. They got to see him in preseason action. They got to see him in practice and in the meeting rooms. I mean, the Washington Commanders fired their offensive coordinator. So like all the practices and film study and meetings that they've had with the coordinator, that coordinator is now gone, right? But still, the Washington Commanders, after one season of this, are like, this could be our guy. Like, this could be our dude, to the point where they went and got Jacoby Brissett. And you know, I don't want to throw shade at Jacoby Brissett, but who's more likely to become a full-time starter for an NFL team at this point in time in their careers, Baker Mayfield or Jacoby Brissett? I would say Baker Mayfield. That's who the Bucs went after. They didn't go after Jacoby, a career backup who's going to be a career backup. No, they went after a guy who come in and potentially be the starter. That is what they think of Kyle Trask. Like, that's telling you right there. We think of Kyle Trask. We need to go get a guy that's going to legitimately compete for a starting position, because Washington says they're having open competition. Nobody believes them, but it's the younger guy that everybody has penned in as the eventual starter. In Tampa, nobody believes this competition conversation, but it's the younger guy who's being the backup. You know what I mean? And look,
are they selling Jacoby Brissett jerseys on the Commanders website?
I don't believe so. No, I don't believe so.
I will vet that
Commanders website. Yeah. But but look, I mean, I just think, again, this team is showing you what they think of them. Their decision making is showing you what they think of them. And then again, if they double down and go get a Hendon Hooker in the 3rd round or even the 2nd round, that's even more what they think of Kyle Trask, because that move is like, you don't bring in Baker Mayfield and potentially draft a quarterback like Hendon Hooker if you think that Kyle Trask might be your franchise guy. You just don't do that. All right. But Tristan Wirfs, regardless of what's going on in the quarterback position, is preparing for change. Bottom line. And it's a big change. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Bucs is brought to you by FanDuel. Grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back. And there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can step up to the plate with a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet, and you get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Right now, if you bet $100 on the Tampa Bay Rays to win the World Series, you get $1,000 when it happens. And I mean, they're looking pretty good. Like, World Series aren't won in April, but if they were, you might be in the business. Or you can play it safe, go with the favorites, Houston Astros, Los Angeles Dodgers, or you can go big and go with the Oakland Athletics. If you do that, you might want to just go home. Whatever you choose, don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up. FanDuel, official betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thanks again for making the Locked On Bucs podcast first listen or your first view of the day. Everydayers, make sure you continue your everyday streak because tomorrow James Yarcho is talking about somebody else throwing shade at Devin White. And it's a pretty good, it's not really a dig. It's just a very intuitive comment that really just kind of reinforces everything Locked On Bucs has been saying, which, I always appreciate. So even if Kyle Trask is ignoring us, Tristan Wirfs agrees with us. Like we can.
I have a very important update, David.
What's that?
On the Commander shop, Carson Wentz jerseys are still on the first page.
Hey, man, there's a sale going on. Got to get as much capital as you can to drive up that value.
Jacoby Brissett jerseys are on page 3.
Okay. I mean, open competition, right? So why not? Jacoby Brissett's family deserves jerseys too. Look, long snapper. This is not a Commanders episode, but Commanders long snapper Cameron Cheeseman, his family comes to every game wearing Cheeseman jerseys. You can't miss them because they're the only long snapper jerseys in the entire building. It's amazing. I love the support that Cameron Cheeseman gets from his family.
When I was in Cleveland for the Browns-Bucks game, I saw a Zach Triner jersey.
Yeah, perfect.
You got to love it.
Absolutely. All right. We speculated for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have said that it's not easy to do and that we should stop bringing it up. But it appears that Tristan Wirfs may have been preparing to move to left tackle. It's easier than saying that sentence. Tristan Wirfs may have been preparing to move to left tackle. And speaking to the media, Wirfs said he has been, quote, working at both right and left tackle just in case I've been covering my bases, end quote. James, this isn't a usual preparation method for offensive linemen, but it's also not usual for offensive linemen to jump out of a pool without touching anything but the edge of the pool with the bottom of their feet. They don't go through an offseason preparing to play both sides of the line. But is Tristan Wirfs just being safe, just being smart and preparing for anything, or is there something more to this dual-sided preparation by young Mr. Tristan?
I would say this preparation is 92.6% confirmation that Tristan Wirfs will be the Buccaneers left tackle in 2023.
I was going to go 96.2%. So
okay. All right. Well, there's still a little wiggle room for both of us, but you don't take your all-pro right tackle and have him work on switching sides of the line just to cover your bases. No, this was a situation where maybe it was Jason, maybe it was Bruce, maybe it was Todd. It could have been anybody. They let Tristan know, hey, we're getting rid of Donovan Smith. We are cutting him. You are going to be our left tackle. Yeah. And maybe this doesn't work. Maybe in 2023, this flat out doesn't work. And then Tristan moves back over to the right side. The Buccaneers can take whoever they draft, or maybe they sign somebody in the offseason leading up or following the 2023 season and put them on the left side. But maybe this does work. And I've said on this show before, our everydayers probably remember about a month or so ago, I said Tristan Wirfs being 85% on the left side, what he is on the right, he's still a top 10 left tackle in the NFL, period. Like there's no debate over that. And he'll get better as he continues to play on that side, which means you could end up with a top 5 left tackle at that point with Tristan Wirfs. So no, this isn't covering bases. This is Tristan Wirfs, our best offensive lineman, arguably our best offensive player, period, is moving to the most important position outside of quarterback on the offense because Donovan Smith didn't work. we are not drafting high enough to grab a left tackle, but by God, we can get a starting right tackle on day 2.
Yeah, look, if Tristan Wirfs doesn't work on the left side, Bucs fans keep an eye on Notre Dame's Joe Alt, one of the predetermined best tackles in next year's draft class.
They do love their Notre Dame linemen.
There's some homework for you. So Tristan Wirfs making this comment, it's not just Tristan Wirfs covering his bases. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers telling Tristan Wirfs, hey, bud, we may need you to move to the left side. Do us a favor, go ahead and prepare for this. Because here's the thing. If Tristan Wirfs is not being told to do this by the Buccaneers, then this means he's doing this on his own volition. If he's doing this on his own volition, it means he's basically listening to the Locked On Bucs podcast, the Pewter Report podcast, Loose Cannons. He's reading BucsGameDay.com, BucsNation.com, and being like, oh, man, I might have to move to the left side. I should probably prepare for that. And if you're a Buccaneers coach and your all-pro right tackle comes in and says, hey, coach, I've been listening and reading to all these media reports and speculating saying I might move, so I've been preparing. The first thing you do is you fix that problem right then and there. Because as much as I love listening to us and I love our everydayers for listening to us and even our non-everydayers for listening to us, when you do, Tristan Wirfs should not be taking career advice from the Locked On Bucs podcast. I like us, but let's just be honest here. That shouldn't be the way that he's approaching his business. So 100% the Tampa Bay Buccaneers told Tristan, we might need you to move to the left depending on what happens in the draft. Do us a favor and start wiping your butt with the other hand. He is going to get some help on the offensive line, though. The Bucs made the signing of former Chargers guard, Matt Filer, official on Monday. Started 33 games over the last 2 seasons. They also have last year's starting left guard, Nick Leverett, who signed his exclusive rights tender. So some good offensive line depth here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. James, how do those 2 official signings, official moves, impact the draft strategy?
I think it affects the draft strategy from the standpoint of you don't have to draft an interior offensive lineman at this point in time. You have enough depth guys and enough versatile guys that you have your starting 4 of your starting 5, right? We still don't know the answer at right tackle, but you have Wirfs, you have potentially Hainsey or Leverett, you have potentially Filer or Stinney, you have Ryan Jensen. You are set, and then you still have the depth there with Gedeke. You still have plenty of other guys that you can rotate in, move around, fill in if need be at injury. The only question now is right tackle. So now the Bucs are able to shift their focus. Okay, we know we need a tackle, but now we also need running back, and we still need safety, and we still need corner, and we need a linebacker. We need potentially we can grab a quarterback. We still need depth at wide receiver. So it does open things up for them that they don't have to focus on drafting a Steve Avila or, who's the guy we were just talking about yesterday, Cody Mauch. You don't have to draft. And Mauch is still on the table because he does play all 5 positions. So maybe they do give him a try at right tackle. But it opens up the ability to now draft a different position of need. So, solid stuff there from the Bucs to help shore up the offensive line and its depth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go to record saying I think Cody Mauch is the best NFL prospect to come out of the North Dakota State Bison program ever. It's ever.
Is that a shot at Wentz?
Just putting that out there. Cody Mauch, best North Dakota State Bison prospect ever.
Cody Mauch should have played hockey with that smile that he's got, but he's a lovable goofball, and I think a lot of Buccaneers fans would enjoy having him on the team. I mean, his pro comp's Alex Kappa, so
right. I mean, yeah. How can you beat it? You know what I mean? Look, I was having this conversation with a couple buddies of mine actually earlier on Monday. For all that we kind of like look at the Bucs offensive line and kind of hold on and brace for impact, this group is actually very deep and very, very solid. And I think that's a hat tip that I think you have to give to Jason Light, obviously, for building the roster, but then also the coaching staff for making good with them. Luke Gedeke is really the only kind of like what is happening here.
Right.
And you're bound to have a miss. So as much as people like me are down on Luke Gedeke right now, let's not burn the entire offensive line because of it. But the problem still exists on the offensive tackle side of things. I don't know where Luke Gedeke is going to play. For all I know, he's going to be a 3rd tight end, you know what I mean, and just block guys in line by Kieft or something. I don't know what's going to happen with this dude. But, you have to address the tackle position, whether that's in day 1, whether that's early on day 2, you have to address the tackle position. The good news is you're going to have guys. Like if there's a draft class that's stacked for teams that need tackles, this is one of them. So you're gonna find guys.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And it's something that we've discussed a lot with other people that don't follow the Buccaneers as closely. Is this offensive line really struggled and was really bad last season because of the way all of those injuries just stacked up. You were working with third string guys, you were working with practice squad guys because there were just no more bodies left. So having a healthy, group of guys, especially with Ryan Jensen still in the middle there, this offensive line has the opportunity to look completely different from what we saw last season, just based off of being healthy in and of itself. So yeah, don't need to be too down on the offensive line. I like what they're doing. Just got to fill one spot, got to figure out how they're going to fill it. And we're going to know in a little more than a week. But there's also a lot of excitement from the players regarding the Buccaneers' other big addition this offseason. Of course, that's offensive coordinator Dave Canales. That is next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Wrapping things up here on a Tuesday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. David, players are excited to start the Canales era of Buccaneers football. One of the players that spoke to the media that we have not spoken about yet today was your favorite, my favorite, our viewers and listeners' favorite, our everydayers' favorite, Rachaad White, RB1, until they draft Bijan Robinson next Thursday. And he spoke really highly of new offensive coordinator Dave Canales on Monday, saying, quote, "I'm very excited. Coach Canales has great energy, so that's a big thing. When you sense and feel great energy around you, it makes you excited. That's a big thing. I've been having conversations with him today, and we've been going over a lot of things. It's going to be great to kind of see what our offense is made of and what we can accomplish when we're all on the same page. Like you said, being able to run the ball and understanding that football is a physical game. A lot of things that we're going to do sets us up for other things that we want to do." He spoke on it today. We just want to do everything well and be very balanced. Now, quarterback Kyle Trask shared similar sentiments. And what he had to say about Dave Canales was, quote, "I'm very, very excited about this new offense. I'm loving every part of it so far. And if you look back to what they were able to do in Seattle last year, it's a very quarterback-friendly offense. They do a great job of tying the run and pass game together, putting themselves in the best position possible. I think it's going to be very good for the people in this building. I noticed this morning it's going to be a very young team, a lot of new faces. So it's going to be very important for us to have not necessarily a simpler system, but a system that allows us to play fast and play confidently," end quote. David, this seems like the kind of guy that players are already rallying behind. Everything that we've heard from everybody that's talked about Dave Canales is really, really exciting. None of these guys have been able to talk about him without a huge smile on their face. No. But ever since Canales' introductory presser, everyone that has spoken about Dave Canales himself has said it numerous times. We've heard it over and over and over. And it's the word balance.
Yeah.
What does that look like, in your opinion, with the way this team is constructed right now?
I think what it looks like is understanding this game is four-dimensional, right? We've talked about this on this show before, so people have heard me talk about that before. A lot of people want to talk about the left, the right, and the deep part of the field in front of the line of scrimmage. People forget about the backfield and how much of a weapon that can potentially be and how you can manipulate defenses by what you do in the backfield. And I think when you watch the Seattle Seahawks offense, you see a good amount of those kinds of things. They'll do things with a tight end on all four levels of the offense. They'll do things with the running backs. Everybody does things with the running backs on all four levels of the offense. And some will use a guy like Tyler Lockett or Russell Gage in that fourth level of the offense. But really, you're talking about guys like Mike Evans being used in the fourth level of the offense. I mean, James, we've seen Mike Evans turn quick screen passes before if the blocks get set up into solid chunks of yardage. In fact, there was a time in Mike Evans' career where that's the only run after catch he was getting. I mean, let's just be honest here, right? Mike Evans has admitted that himself. So Mike Evans, guys, don't come at me. He's admitted it himself. It's okay. We're all on the same page here. But I think that's what you're going to see from Dave Canales. You're going to see an understanding of where can we attack this defense the best. And really what that's going to come down to is the defense is going to show you where you can attack them best. When you talk about a balanced offense, it's not just about 50-50 run pass splits. No, what I think we're talking about is if the defense is going to overload playing deep, well, okay, you look at this thing as almost like a pendulum. If the defense is backloaded, what do we need to do? Let's front load it. Let's dump it underneath. Let's hit the backfield routes. Let's get guys going out of the line of scrimmage, and let's make them come closer to the middle part, the pendulum part of that offense, which is more towards the middle part of the field. If they're stacked in the middle of the field, okay, well, where do we feel like we can get over on them to push that weight elsewhere? And what you want to do is you want to make the defense react to what the offense is doing to keep that thing, quote unquote, balanced. That's kind of what I envision when I think about this. And what I think this really boils down to is something that what we were missing last year is when you look across the spectrum of successful NFL teams and you look about the quarterback coach relationship, sometimes head coach, sometimes offensive coordinator, this game is chess, right? This game is not checkers. Everybody knows that. Bucs fans, you know that. Locked On Bucs listeners, you're very in tune with that. This game is chess. It is not checkers. When your quarterback is more in tune with the layers of the game than your offensive coordinator or your head coach, depending on the scenario, right? In this situation, I would say offensive coordinator because Todd Bowles really kind of hands off with the offense for the most part. So when your quarterback is more in tune with the different layers going on with the offense and with the game than your offensive coordinator is, your quarterback's got to be in charge. And you look at Tom Brady in New England, Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, until kind of like recently. When your offensive coordinator is more in tune with the layering of the game, then they can be in charge. What you really want is this beautiful marriage of two guys that are both in tune with the layers of the game. And when I think about that, I think about Joe Burrow and his offensive coordinator that I literally just forgot the name of as I was about to say it in Cincinnati. I think you've got two guys there that understand the layers of a football game and they work together beautifully. One of them is going to be a head coach. One of them is a potential MVP. That's the relationship you get. But if it's lopsided, whoever understands the layers of the game the best needs to be in control. Last year, that guy wasn't in control. The guy who understood it the least was in control. And I almost look at it as like an honors student sitting in the 5th grade classroom, bored. What usually happens? Chaos. And that's what you saw. This year, I think your offensive coordinator is more understanding and in tune with the layers that come into the game. You see that with what he does as the passing game coordinator in Seattle. And here with the Buccaneers, Kyle Trask is raw, very green still, for no fault of his own for the most part. Because even if Kyle Trask is super talented, he's still not getting on the field, right? Not with Tom Brady. Baker Mayfield has had some of his struggles. So you have two quarterbacks who come in, a little bit of experience on one side more than the other, but you have an offensive coordinator that understands these layers. As long as he can communicate them and get them to sing, then everything will work out better. I'm not saying, book the Super Bowl parade, but I think it'll work out better. And I think that's what you're going to see this year is a little bit more of that kind of a balance where you're pulling off of what the defense is doing as far as how they're weighting against you.
That's one of the best explanations I've ever heard. It might be that's
Sun Devil energy, baby.
That might be a top 5 David Harrison monologue in the history of Locked On Bucs. Everydayers, you need to weigh in on this. You need to let us know if that was a top 5 David Harrison moment on this show. I really have nothing to add, outside of, this is a team, as you so brilliantly put it, the guy who didn't know as much was the one that was in charge last year. Dave Canales understands. Baker Mayfield understands. This football team is not going to win throwing the ball 50 times a game the way they've had to do the last couple of years. And
Shout
I say
to
had
Adams.
to do, last year they had to because they were always behind. But, the years before that, you had your Rojo games, you had your Lenny games, and then you had your Brady games. I think this year we're going to see a little bit more of, 20 to 26 passes. A lot of carries by Rachaad White, a lot of carries by whatever other running back they draft, or maybe it is Chase Edmonds, or maybe it is Keyshawn Vaughn that is that number 2 guy. A lot of short to intermediate passes, pick your spots to go deep. But, we are going to have games. It's a guarantee. We are going to have games where the run game just isn't working, and Baker's got to chuck it 32, 36 times. may not lead to success. There are going to be games where Baker just isn't getting it done and the running game is on fire and there's going to be 40 some combined carries among the running backs. That to me is the balance that you're really looking for. Like you said, it's not a 50-50 split. It's what is working and knowing what you can do. Sometimes it's going to be a passing kind of game. Sometimes it's going to be a rushing kind of game. That's the balance you're looking for. You can't be the New York Giants and rely solely on Saquon Barkley to run your offense. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to work. And even these really successful teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, who just paid Jalen Hurts a crap ton of money, or the Kansas City Chiefs, Kansas City Chiefs don't have a number one running back. They have a stable of like 86 dudes that can run for 2 yards a carry, but it works.
Including Noah Gray, their like third tight end.
Yeah. So that's the kind of balance you're looking for. Sometimes it's going to be a 40 carry game. Sometimes it's going to be a 40 pass game. You just hope that more often than not, it's 25 passes, 25 carries. Everybody's happy and the Bucs go home with the dub.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ideally you're passing more in the beginning and then through the last 40%, 35% of the game, you're running the balls because you want to control the clock. And you're bleeding the thing, right? So you brought up the Chiefs. I think that's a brilliant kind of example. So you talk about the balance of a game. And again, there's kind of the way that I envision balance in the live action of a football game. And what's the play design that the Kansas City Chiefs use against the Philadelphia Eagles so successfully? It's a very, very simple short route combination, short route design. Why was it so successful? Because the Philadelphia Eagles were backloaded. Their defense was completely backloaded. So the Kansas City Chiefs, Eric Bieniemy, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes said, okay, look, if you're going to sit at the back of the pendulum, we're just going to drop weight in front of you. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not as simple as just saying, well, throw the ball in front of the defense. That's the simplistic way of doing it, but it's also got to be successful. Weight equals pressure, right? So that's really what we're talking about is how do you put pressure on an opposing defense? It's not as simple as just throw a dump off. They play back, you throw a dump off. Okay, but the dump off's got to work, right? The dump off has to be successful. So you can't just say dump the ball off. And what the Kansas City Chiefs did is they dumped the ball off and the timing of it really was what was most impressive because you really didn't give the Eagles an opportunity to adjust. By the time they really came out there and said, we're going to exploit this now, the Eagles are basically saying, okay, there's no time for us to get our balance back and adjust to it. But I promise you, if the Eagles had quickly adjusted to, I promise you, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy had a counter. So now if the defense pushes the weight back towards the middle of the field, they have a counter. I don't know what that was. I imagine it's probably Kadarius Toney doing something crazy. But that is, to me, that's when you talk about a balanced offense. Take what the defense is giving you, but the way you execute, understanding that and how you counter it is really what gives your offense balance because you end up, again, throw the ball 30 times in the first 2.5 quarters, but then you run the ball 30 times in the last quarter and a half, and you get the win.
And that's another example of that perfect meld that you were talking about. You brought up Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. That Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy triangle meld was a thing of perfection for a long time. Interested to see how the Kansas City Chiefs do without Eric Bieniemy. I get the feeling there's not going to be a whole lot of drop off, but we are about to drop out of this episode because our time is up, but we want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view of the day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes. Join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Tomorrow is a WTSP Wednesday, but Evan's not going to be here because the Lightning are in the Stanley Cup playoffs and they are playing the Leafs when he and I would normally be recording. On top of that, my son has hockey tryouts, so I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to jump on here, but I will come at you solo talking about some shade being thrown. And of course, if there's anything that you want to hear about, make sure you drop your questions, your topic suggestions, or your thoughts. See, I caught your inability to not English, or your thoughts to lockedonbuckspodcast@gmail.com or slide in the DMs on Twitter @LockedOnBucs. Make sure you're checking out David's work over at BucksGameDay.com. Check out my work over at BucksNation.com. Follow everything on Twitter @LockedOnBucs, @JYarcho_Bucks, and @DHarrison82. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs. part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.